hate you. And at WrestleMania you're going to lose, and then you'll acknowledge me. These are the words that came out of Roman Reigns' mouth on this week's Monday Night Raw. But once that's done, Roman Reigns better be prepared, because Seth Rollins is coming for him with everything he has. Imagine Monday Night Raw opening in chaos. The kind of chaos the Bloodline used to unleash. Braun Breaker storms out alone. No allies, no backup, just fury. Rage consumes him. He starts hurling chairs across ringside, flipping over the commentary desk, tearing apart everything in sight. Then he marches into the ring, microphone in hand. "Adam Pearce, you ruined everything," he shouts. Suddenly, members of the Vision rush down to the ring. Braun snaps at Paul, ordering him to stay back. "That bald idiot ruined my Royal Rumble. I'll ruin his entire show." Paul steps up to a mic, claiming none of this is Braun's fault. Everyone who went to Saudi Arabia needed a visa. So wouldn't Adam Pearce know exactly who that masked man was? Didn't he approve it? That makes this his responsibility. The tension in the air was suffocating as Monday Night Raw prepared to kick off, and nobody in the WWE universe could have predicted just how explosive and chaotic things were about to become. The aftermath of recent events had left everyone on edge, with alliances crumbling, egos bruising, and the road to WrestleMania becoming more treacherous with each passing week. Something significant was brewing beneath the surface, a storm gathering momentum that would soon unleash its full fury upon everyone involved. The stage was set for confrontation, for revelation, and for the kind of television that makes wrestling fans lose their minds with excitement and disbelief. Roman Reigns had spoken words that echoed through the entire wrestling world just days ago. Standing in the center of the ring with that commanding presence that has defined his character for years, the tribal chief had looked directly into the camera and delivered a message that sent shockwaves through social media and wrestling forums everywhere. His voice had been calm but loaded with menace, each syllable calculated for maximum impact. He had directed his words at Seth Rollins with the kind of personal venom that suggested this rivalry went far deeper than championship aspirations or WrestleMania positioning. This was about respect, about legacy, about two men who had once stood side by side as brothers in the Shield, now finding themselves on a collision course that could only end in destruction. The words Roman had chosen were surgical in their precision and devastating in their delivery. He told Seth Rollins that he hated him, and the way he said it carried the weight of years of complicated history between them. These weren't two strangers trading insults for the cameras. These were two men who knew each other's strengths and weaknesses intimately, who had traveled thousands of miles together, who had shared victories and defeats, who had been family before they became enemies. When Roman promised that Seth would lose at WrestleMania and would then have no choice but to acknowledge him, it wasn't just trash talk. It was a prophecy delivered by someone who genuinely believed in his own dominance and superiority. But Roman Reigns had made a critical mistake in his assessment of the situation. He had focused so intently on WrestleMania, on that grand stage where legends are made and broken, that he had forgotten about everything that would happen between now and then. He had forgotten that Seth Rollins wasn't just any opponent. Seth Rollins was the visionary, the architect, the man who had proven time and time again that he was always thinking several moves ahead of everyone else. And most importantly, Roman had forgotten that Seth Rollins had absolutely no intention of waiting until WrestleMania to make Roman's life absolutely miserable. The opening moments of Monday Night Raw felt different from the usual polished production that WWE typically delivers. There was an energy in the building that suggested something unscripted and dangerous was about to occur. The production crew seemed on edge, cameras positioned at unusual angles, technical staff whispering urgently into headsets. The crowd sensed it too, their anticipation building with each passing second before the show officially began. They knew that after everything that had been said and done in recent weeks, tonight was going to be special, was going to be the kind of episode that people would be talking about for months to come. Then the chaos erupted. Braun Breaker's music hit the speakers with an intensity that made the entire arena vibrate. But something was immediately wrong. The presentation was off, the timing unusual, the energy surrounding his entrance darker and more aggressive than typical. When Breaker emerged from behind the curtain, His face told the entire story before he spoke a single word. This was a man consumed by rage, blinded by fury, operating on pure emotion rather than rational thought. His massive frame seemed even more imposing as he stormed down the entrance ramp with murder in his eyes and destruction on his mind. Braun Breaker wasn't accompanied by anyone. No allies flanked him, no faction members followed to provide backup or moral support. He was completely alone, which somehow made him seem even more dangerous and unpredictable. A man with nothing to lose and nobody to answer to is capable of anything, and Breaker's body language suggested he was ready to tear the entire arena apart with his bare hands if that's what it took to express his rage and frustration. The ringside area became a war zone within seconds of Breaker's arrival. He grabbed steel chairs with both hands and hurled them violently across the area, the metallic clanging echoing through the arena as chairs crashed into barricades, stairs, and each other. The sound was visceral and frightening, a physical manifestation of the anger consuming him. Fans in the front rows pulled back instinctively, some raising their phones to capture the destruction, while others simply stared in shock at the display of raw aggression unfolding before them. The commentary desk, that sacred space where announcers had been calling matches for decades, became Breaker's next target. With a roar of pure fury, he flipped the entire structure over, sending monitors, papers, headsets, and equipment crashing to the floor in a cacophony of breaking electronics and scattered debris. The commentators scrambled away from their posts, evacuating to a safe distance while Breaker continued his rampage. This wasn't a worked segment where destruction is carefully choreographed to look impressive while remaining safe. This felt real, felt dangerous, felt like a man who had genuinely snapped and was taking out his frustrations on everything and everyone in his path. Timekeeper's area, ring steps, barricades. Nothing was safe from Breaker's wrath. He moved with purpose through the ringside area, systematically destroying everything he could get his hands on. The production crew tried to capture every angle, cameras following his path of destruction while also maintaining safe distances. Security personnel appeared at the top of the entrance ramp but hesitated to intervene, clearly uncertain about how to handle a man of Breaker's size and current mental state. Finally, Braun Breaker slid into the ring itself, the squared circle that is supposed to be sacred ground in professional wrestling. He paced like a caged animal, his breathing heavy, his fists clenched, his entire body language screaming violence and retribution. Someone handed him a microphone through the ropes, probably against their better judgment but recognizing that the WWE Universe needed to hear what had driven this man to such extreme measures. When Breaker raised the microphone to his lips, his voice was raw with emotion and barely controlled rage. He called out Adam Pearce by name, the WWE official responsible for making matches and maintaining order within the company. Breaker's accusation was direct and damning. He blamed Pearce for ruining everything, for destroying his plans, for interfering in matters that Pearce had no business involving himself in. The specifics of his grievance related to the Royal Rumble, that annual spectacle where 30 superstars compete for a WrestleMania championship opportunity. The story that Breaker was referencing had captured the wrestling world's attention for days. During the Royal Rumble match, a masked competitor had entered and caused havoc, interfering with the outcome and specifically targeting Braun Breaker in a way that cost him what should have been his moment of glory. The identity of the masked man had been the subject of intense speculation and debate among fans and wrestlers alike. Some had theories, others had suspicions, but nobody had definitive proof of who was beneath that mask and why they had chosen to sabotage Breaker's opportunity. But Braun Breaker wasn't interested in speculation or theory. He was operating on a certainty that Adam Pearce had known exactly who was beneath that mask and had allowed it to happen anyway. His rage was focused on the perceived injustice of having his WrestleMania dreams stolen by what he saw as corrupt administration and biased officiating. The bitterness in his voice was palpable as he threatened to ruin Pearce's entire show, to make Monday Night Raw a nightmare for everyone involved until he received the justice and retribution he believed he was owed. The crowd's reaction was complex and divided. Some fans sympathized with Breaker's frustration, understanding the anger that comes from having opportunities stolen. Others booed his destruction of property and threatening behavior. But everyone was engaged. Everyone was invested. Everyone wanted to see where this was going and how it would be resolved. The unpredictability of the moment was its greatest strength, keeping viewers glued to their screens because anything could happen next. Then the dynamic shifted again as members of the Vision began making their way down the entrance ramp. The Vision, that mysterious faction that had been causing problems throughout WWE for weeks, moved with coordinated purpose toward the ring. Their presence immediately added another layer of complexity to an already chaotic situation. Were they there to support Breakker, to calm him down, or to take advantage of the chaos for their own purposes? The uncertainty kept everyone on edge. Paul Levesque, better known to the world as Triple H but operating now primarily in his role as WWE's Chief Content Officer, emerged among the members of the Vision. His presence was significant because it blurred the lines between authority figure and participant, between management and talent. When Paul appeared in storylines, it usually meant something major was developing, some plot point that would have significant implications for WWE's future direction. Braun Breaker's reaction to Paul's approach was immediate and hostile. He snapped at Paul to stay back, his voice sharp with warning. The relationship between these two characters was clearly complicated, with Breakker simultaneously part of the Vision yet asserting his independence and refusing to be controlled or managed. He reiterated his accusations against Adam Pearce, that bald idiot who had ruined the Royal Rumble and by extension ruined Breakker's career trajectory and WrestleMania aspirations. Paul took a microphone himself, his voice cutting through the tension with the authority that comes from decades in the business and his current position of legitimate power within WWE. His words were carefully chosen, designed to redirect blame and reframe the narrative in a way that served the Vision's purposes. He claimed that none of what happened was Braun's fault, that Breakker had been a victim of circumstances beyond his control and administrative failures that should never have occurred. Then Paul dropped a bombshell that would send the entire situation in a new direction. He brought up the logistics of international WWE events, specifically referencing the recent show in Saudi Arabia. Every performer who traveled to Saudi Arabia required a visa, extensive paperwork, government approval for entry into the country. This isn't casual information. It's a significant logistical undertaking that involves WWE's legal department, travel coordinators, and international relations specialists. The process takes time and requires WWE officials to know exactly who is traveling well in advance. Paul's implication was clear and devastating. If the masked man who interfered in the Royal Rumble had been at that Saudi Arabia show, then Adam Pearce and WWE administration must have known exactly who that person was. They would have seen the visa applications, the travel manifests, the documentation required for international events. They would have approved that person's presence at the show. Which meant that Adam Pearce either knew about the masked man's identity and allowed the Royal Rumble interference to happen anyway, or was so incompetent at his job that he had completely failed to notice or prevent it. The logic was airtight, the accusation damning, and the implications enormous. Paul was essentially calling out WWE's entire administrative structure as either corrupt or incompetent, possibly both. He was suggesting that Braun Breakker had been deliberately screwed over by the very people who were supposed to ensure fair competition. And by extension, he was creating justification for the Vision to continue operating outside normal rules and conventions, positioning them as fighters against a corrupt system rather than villains causing problems. The crowd processed this information with a mixture of shock and appreciation for the clever storytelling. Wrestling fans love when real-world logistics and backstage realities are incorporated into storylines in ways that make the fictional narrative feel more grounded and believable. The visa angle was exactly that kind of detail, something most fans wouldn't have thought about but that made perfect sense once explained, adding layers of complexity to what could have been a simple mystery attacker storyline. Braun Breaker's demeanor shifted slightly as Paul spoke, his rage now given direction and justification. He wasn't just an angry monster destroying things for no reason. He was a victim of systemic failure and possibly deliberate sabotage. The narrative reframing was masterful, taking what could have been a one-dimensional character having a temper tantrum and transforming it into something with legitimate grievance and understandable motivation. But the real mastermind behind all of this chaos hadn't even appeared yet. Seth Rollins, the visionary, the architect, had been conspicuously absent from the opening of Raw despite being at the center of the biggest storyline heading into WrestleMania. His confrontation with Roman Reigns had dominated wrestling coverage all week, with fans eagerly anticipating how he would respond to Roman's threats and promises. The fact that he hadn't appeared during this opening chaos was itself significant, suggesting that his response would come in a different form, at a different time, in a way that nobody would expect. Because that's how Seth Rollins operates. He doesn't simply show up and brawl in predictable patterns. He thinks, he plans, he manipulates circumstances to his advantage. The architect nickname isn't just branding. It represents his entire approach to competition and storytelling. While others are focused on immediate gratification and straightforward confrontation, Rollins is building elaborate structures designed to collapse on his enemies when they least expect it. The chaos that Braun Breaker had unleashed wasn't random or disconnected from the larger story. It was all part of something bigger, something that would soon become clear. The Vision's involvement, the accusations against Adam Pearce, the Saudi Arabia visa revelation. These were all pieces of a larger puzzle that Seth Rollins had been assembling behind the scenes. While Roman Reigns was confidently looking ahead to WrestleMania, secure in his position and power, Rollins was systematically dismantling everything around him, creating chaos and instability that would undermine Roman's big win before it even happened. As the segment continued to unfold, more members of the Vision appeared throughout the arena. They weren't attacking anyone directly, but their presence created an atmosphere of menace and unpredictability. They positioned themselves strategically around ringside, in the crowd, near the entrance ramp. It was psychological warfare, making everyone in the building feel surrounded and vulnerable, demonstrating that the Vision had the numbers and positioning to strike whenever they chose. Adam Pearce eventually emerged, looking flustered and defensive, clearly unprepared for the accusations being leveled against him. He attempted to explain the Royal Rumble situation, to deflect blame, to maintain his authority as a WWE official. But his words rang hollow against the specific and devastating visa accusation that Paul had made. The more Pearce tried to talk his way out of the situation, the guiltier he appeared, the more it seemed like the Vision's accusations had merit. The confrontation between Pearce and the Vision escalated, with Breaker becoming more aggressive, Paul becoming more accusatory, and the situation spiraling further out of control. Security tried to maintain order but were clearly outmatched and overwhelmed. The show was in chaos, exactly as Braun Breaker had promised, and WWE's usual polished presentation had been replaced with something that felt raw, unpredictable, and genuinely dangerous. Then, finally, Seth Rollins appeared. But he didn't run down the ramp or burst through the crowd. He appeared on the Titantron, his face filling the massive screen, his presence dominating the arena despite not being physically there. The timing was perfect, waiting until the chaos had reached its peak, until everyone was focused on the ring and the confrontation between Breaker, Paul, and Pearce. Rollins' sudden appearance on screen immediately shifted all attention to him, demonstrating his ability to control a room even from a remote location. Seth Rollins' expression was calm, almost amused, as he surveyed the chaos unfolding in the arena. He began speaking, his voice cutting through the noise and confusion like a knife. He addressed Roman Reigns directly, referencing Roman's promise that Seth would lose at WrestleMania and would then be forced to acknowledge the tribal chief. Rollins' response dripped with sarcasm and confidence, making it clear that he found Roman's certainty laughable and misguided. The visionary explained that Roman had made a fundamental miscalculation in his planning and preparation. Roman was so focused on WrestleMania, on that single night where they would finally clash one-on-one, that he had completely ignored everything that would happen between now and then. Roman thought he could make threats and promises about the future without consequences in the present. But Seth Rollins was about to teach him a very painful lesson about the dangers of looking too far ahead while ignoring immediate threats. Rollins revealed that everything happening in the arena right now, the chaos that Braun Breaker had unleashed, the Vision's coordinated presence, the accusations against Adam Pearce, all of it was part of his design. He was the architect, and he had been building this structure for weeks, placing pieces carefully and precisely, waiting for the perfect moment to set everything in motion. The goal wasn't to attack Roman directly, at least not yet.